So hi everyone, welcome to this session at JoomlaDay USA 2022. Just first of all, to check everybody's actually clicked on the right one, this is my first workflows plugin session at 6:45 UK time. So I think that's what I don't know what time it's supposed to be in the US. Everything's translated to the UK for me on all my systems. So first, I think we need to thank our sponsors. We've got some main ones: Watch for Rock and Open Source Matters in Commerce Lab, and there's many more that have actually ended up sponsoring the event and making it an affordable event and something that's been fab all day so far. The rest of the sponsors are over at the website. So I'd better get on with introducing the speaker. We've got Phil Walton, who is from the UK, and he's going to give this talk. Apparently, he's an inventor, juggler, and cat owner, and you can guess which one's more important to him. One thing he is an active member of the London user group for Joomla, and he gives talks there regularly. His day job is hosting, building, and maintaining sites for clients of his company SoftForge, including Shell, the UK National Health Service, and the UK Police, plus probably most importantly, the local Real Ale pub down the road. He's an active Joomla and currently coordinating the Google Summer of Code. We've agreed that we'll do the talk first, and please put any questions. You'll see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. If you put questions in there, we'll pick those up at the end of the talk and give Phil a chance to work through them with you. Okay, I'm going to shut up and let Phil get on with a fabulous presentation we've all been looking forward to. So Phil, over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen? Is it sharing?
We can, yes.
Oh, lovely. Okay. So thanks for the introduction, and you just got back from a nice little time away up in the lakes, and I've been down my local pub looking at beer but not drinking it all day because of this event. So a little bit about me. I think I wrote that last year where I was more into Google Summer of Code. Since then I took on marketing, and then that was recently moved into outreach. So that's now, and I've got a place on the board of OSM. So I am still a mentor in GSOC, and we've had the biggest GSOC we've ever had. I think 400 students and counting. And we've just got accepted into other things as well. So yeah, it's all going very well. And the London Youth Group, Juggle, I've run for about 15 years now. And we do a meeting every third Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock. I love to row on the Thames. I live 6 minutes from the Thames and enjoy fine English ale. I'm a veggie, have been since I was 18, and I have the 6 cats. And the cats are very relevant because halfway through coding, they'll run over the keyboard, and you find these amazing new features that you didn't know that you could do by cats randomly walking over them. Now, my talk is on workflows. I'm going to have to try and move this thing at the top. I daren't actually. Obviously, it will move. Good. My talk is on workflows and why workflows. I use workflows. I've known Benjamin a long time, and was really excited to see workflows coming into the core of Joomla 4.0. And when they came in, I wanted to try and use them because I'd actually done workflows in the past in a really bad way. I'd had to use, for some clients, categories as workflows effectively, and moving things between categories because that's what the client wanted. And I always thought there's got to be a better way than this. And workflows really, really did answer a question for several of my customers. But I very quickly found that I was using workflows in my own business and for some of my own projects. And so there's a little side site that I have called Naturally Relaxing, which was a test site to test out some of the Google algorithm and some interesting things to do with marketing. And so I put workflows on there and had a little play. For several reasons. One is the consistency. So the articles that we write are consistent. They always have intro, main image, We research them, and there's a research phase. There's a phase where I get to review the article before it goes live. There's a phase where we have social media pushed out, and then a kind of a maturing phase for them. And this also gives us speed as well. It allows us to be quite quick with our article writing, has really helped to streamline it. So the setting up of the workflow has more than given back time. And we're regularly reaping that reward. And the workflow is also a reminder that you need to do certain things for SEO, for just the whole business process. And I think it's just really useful. So I would recommend using workflows wherever, even in smaller jobs, because you will find that it helps you to not have those little problems that can occur. I'm going to talk a little bit about workflows to start with, because one of the problems I had was I looked up how to do workflows at the beginning, and found that a lot of the articles that have been written are the theory of workflows rather than a practical, this is what you actually do. So the first half of my talk is, this is setting up a workflow, and the next part is, this is the plugin, this is how you do your own plugin. First thing you need to do is switch on workflows, and it doesn't come in Joomla 4 and 4.1 switched on. It is actually in https://yourwebsite.com/administrator. Then you go to content, then articles, then the options, and inside that you have the integration. And so this is where I've gone in this particular screen here, and I'm in the articles, and you can see just here we've got enable workflows, just like you've got the custom fields and the routing. Now the workflows isn't on automatically, and one of the reasons is you've got the basic workflow, a simple workflow to start with, which is what we've always had, which is publishing, unpublishing, archive, trash, and by switching on the workflow system takes over that, but that can have an effect on things like version control. If you're using versioning in the version article version, so you may not actually want it on straight out of the box. But when you do, this is the place to look, as I say, in articles, in the integration tab, and enable workflow. Am I going the right way? Go back. Right. Yes. So then where do we actually find the workflows? Well, if it's https://yourwebsite.com/administrator, go into content, and there you will find the workflows. And so here we go. We're in content, and there is our workflows, which appears once you've switched it on. And this is a simple. So the backend would usually have, once you switched it on, the basic workflow. This one here, where you have one stage and 7 transitions. I played around, so you can see I messed one up, and so this is ID number 3. And this is the workflow that I set up for my own blogs. And so I call it the blog workflow, as opposed to the basic workflow. Well, what's the point of having 2 workflows? Well, one of the things you can do with workflows is you can assign the workflow to a category. So you can have different workflows for different categories, and that is so useful. So on some of my client sites, there can be some quite complex articles which have to have translations, and they have to have someone else that actually reviews them. So it's really useful to be able to say, for this category, it's this person. For this category, these things have to happen. And for that category, it's a whole different set. So I really recommend you playing around and assigning the right workflow for the right category. You do not have to share the same workflow across the board. So we're going into my blog workflow. And this is what I've actually got. So this is my stages to my workflow. So if I just go back one, you'll see here you have stages and transitions. And here is my blog workflow. You'll notice in the previous screen, the basic one has the default button on. So if you haven't assigned something, that is the one that's used. Here you can set up a series of stages, and this is the stages screen. You will have a default one where when you create a new article, that is where it starts. So for my workflow, we start at the ideas and research stage. We can put lots of bits and bobs into the basic article. Then it goes to production when someone picks it up so that others don't try and use that article. We've got an odd one here, fill finish. That's when staff get stuck, and so they decide that they'll assign it to me. Then we have add images because it's been finished. Then we have a review because I want to review the images as well as the actual writing. Then once it's been reviewed, and up till now, it's not published. Up till now, it's only available in the back end because that's the way we set it up. As soon as we've got the review and I move it from review to publish and send to social media, that goes to another colleague. And then once they've pushed it out, they move it, still published, to published and mature. And the reason we have that is because we can go in a little circle. Let's say the article is to do with Christmas, what to buy your cat for Christmas. And our site's about cats all the time through the year. We may want to republish the social media associated with the article, but not switch the article off. So I can leave it in publish and mature, and then one day decide, right, it's a month before Christmas, we want to push this article. So I will move it back in the workflow to publish and send to social media. And then one of my colleagues will pick it up, push out the social media, and then push it back to publish and mature to let me know that they've done it. We've also got obviously archive and trash, which are the standard ones that you would usually have. So now this is the transitions that the workflow has. Let me just try these buttons. No, that doesn't work. So the transitions are what moves something from one thing to another, to the stages. And so the stages you just got to think of as a naming convention that you know that the article is in that thing. But the important thing is the transition and how it moves. So in the transitions, you can set a lot of different things up, which we'll come on to. So here we have move to production, and then ready for images, and pass to fill, and ready for images again, because that's coming from me doing it. Ready for review, push to social media. And you can see the current stage and the transition stage, the target stage. So it's coming from the idea of research, where they will start, and it's then going to in production. And from production to add images, and also from production to fill finish to add images to the review to the publish in social media, and so on, as you can see. And you can drag and drop the orders, so the order that they appear in the drop down. You can switch them on and off very easily, and you can also move them towards different actions by doing batch. And that's one way of one of the things that you might want to do if you bring in a new workflow and articles were already created with the old workflow. Even though you put them in the category, you sometimes have to go back into the articles, select all the articles, and then use bulk actions in articles to move them to a transition, to move them to a new workflow, because they start off in a workflow. So if I've got them set up in a category, so all the ones that are blogs about cats go to my blog cat workflow. If I've already had articles created before I created the workflow, they would be in the default one. And so I'd actually have to move. That was one little gotcha that got me a few times. So any new ones would go, because of the category, straight into the right workflow. But any old ones that were already created, I would actually have to transition them, move them with the actions when you're in the article part. That makes sense. So let's have a little look at a transition in detail. Now, a transition usually has 1, 2, 3, 4 tabs. We've got this extra one because I've built the workflow email plugin, which we'll come on to soon. But here you can see the transition. It has a current stage, which you can select from our stage list, where we set all the stages up first, and then the finished one. So it's important to set the stages out, all your milestones that you're going to, and then you can use the transitions to move them there. And you can put notes about them so that you can understand what's going on. The notification and the email are very similar. Now, I actually made a big mistake when I started using workflows. I thought notification was email. I thought workflows emailed people. I really should have thought about it a bit more, but notification is used in the internal Joomla notification system, whereby you get a little notification at the top when you log in. You've got messages waiting for you. And that was okay, but you see, a lot of my staff haven't got the site open when I'm working on it. So I'll be working on an article, or they'll be working on an article. They'll move the transition, and unless I log into the site, or if they log into the site, they don't know that it's changed and that something's happened. So I really wanted something that would notify and email them and let them know. Hence why I built the email one. Now you can see here, you can set user groups, and you can also set users. And that's really, really important for both notification, but especially for the email one. You've also got the additional text message. So the text message in the email plugin that I built is actually useful because this actually goes into the email. And so can appear in the emails that are sent. You can select a user group to send it to, and we'll come on to the permissions in a little while, but a lot of transitions could be set up so that they are specific to different user groups. So if you were in a much bigger work environment and you had a lot of people who could do the social media or sorted the images or were reviewers, then you would set it to the user group that was them, and then they would all get the message that something had shifted to the user group that they needed to see. Here, we're using the pass to fill one, so obviously the user to notify is me, and so it will email me that something has changed and that it needs to be sent. So I can select multiple people here and send the email or the notification as well to multiple people, or I can set it up with a user group. The permissions is the last tab here, and we've got the ability to set up a series of different permissions, which is really useful. So I've clipped it on the slide here, but that is the last one, execute transition. So can this particular person execute the transition? Are they allowed to even make it move? Can they edit the state? Can they delete, and can they edit the actual permission? So from here, you can use the permissions so that certain user groups and people in those user groups won't even see the workflow, that particular stage in the workflow. They won't even see the transition. They won't even see, they won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to move it from one review point to another review point. And in a bigger organization, that's really important, I think, to give you a strong workflow that means that people are forced through the whole system. Mine is much more, because it's in a house small group, it's more for them to move and they can see all of them. Whereas on a larger scale, and two projects that I'm doing at the moment, we will be fixing it down to user groups and to very specific people. The other thing that you want to do with the ability to lock it down is so that you've got some sort of sign off, so you know that it went to this particular person, the boss, and therefore it was reviewed. So if it's gone to the next transition state, they must have said it was okay. And so it gives confidence for those that are working on material that it has been given to that stage. It has passed to that level. It can't be just an accident, because if you set the permissions up, then only certain groups can see it. And they can be sure that it's okay for them to do their job and publish or whatever they need to do. So this is the back end of the plugin area for workflows. Workflows have their own plugin type now, and that's really nice. And so I've simply selected here the plugin type, and you would normally see notification, publishing, and featuring, because you can feature things in workflows. It's for the feature, unfeature functionality. So you can make something go on the home page or take it off the home page, however you've set up features to work on your Joomla site, as well as publishing and notification. And here we've got the email one as well, which is one that I built, which will send the emails out. Now, one of the things about this is, if we go back to here, you'll see transition, notification, email, actions, and permission. And by moving these around, you can change the order that the tabs show when you're in the actual here. So if I was to change the order of the plugin, so the email was in front of notification, I would literally just need to drag and drop these two, because the other ones don't get to be seen. Drag and drop these two, and it would swap them around. So it's as simple as that. And here we have the actual workflow email plugin. It's virtually the same as the notification one. It gives you the ability to say what extensions you want to allow the plugin to work in and which ones you want to forbid it. And there's not a huge amount of selection here, but imagine workflows grows a lot more, and we have workflows for calendar, workflows for users, workflow for lots of different types of workflow. This area could grow, so you can apply workflows for different groups of things. So you wouldn't want a user workflow to also be accessible for articles and to show in articles. That would make no sense. They're doing two different jobs. So likewise here, you would want to set, as the types of workflow grow, only those workflows that it would be applied to, or just forbid certain extensions from allowing them to use the workflow. And so let's say you just don't want the email facility for users. When users go through a series of workflow, then you could disallow it, the email plugin for that, but allow it for extensions, changing categories, all that sort of thing. So now I'm going to get into the code, and before I do, Benjamin gave me some help with this, and a big thanks to Benjamin. I mean, he put so much time and effort into the whole workflows building system, and I thought so one day I was using the system and then realized that it was only notification, it wasn't emailing everybody. So I messaged him and said, is there one in the pipeline? He said no. Why don't you just build it? So I thought, oh, okay. So I took as the basis the notification one, because it's doing virtually the same, just the end result is an email instead of a notification. So I basically copied that and went through the process of setting it up. It's a simple plugin, setting it up for my own use. So what do we need to do? I mean, I don't know who is actually in the participants at the moment, but I'll assume not a huge amount of coding knowledge. So what you would need to do is set your own folder, effectively in folder structure, and that all comes from the XML file. And there's not many files to a plugin like this. You've got the inside the email, and of course it's clipped off the bottom of the page, but you've effectively got them here. You've got the XML, you've got the PHP file that makes it all happen. We've got an action, we've got a form a piece in there to make the plugin be rendered as it is. And then there's language files. And so the language files, I'll show those in a minute, but they get put into up here under languages. And so that you can make it in, people can then put their own languages in there and extend the plugin for their language. You've got to call it, got to give it a name, obviously. It's the work group. The group is workflow, and that's obviously what makes the plugin show in that specific area that I showed earlier. Allows you to search for it under workflows. We always use method upgrade so that you can add new features and install a newer version of the plugin. It's obviously a type plugin. Giving it some details, I put the Joomla project. The reason is I left it as it is because I'm going to donate it to Joomla 4.2, and so 4.2 will have this plugin available so you can use it for email. So what do we do here? Well, we basically had this allow list and this forbidden list in the field set, which we just looked at. And these are the parameters being set here. So you could set more parameters. You could whatever you like, really. But the parameters the configuration parameters would all be there. One of the important things we need to do is give it a name. And so the file is plugin equals email, and it's email.php is the file name that I chose. Kept it simple. And for those that are not familiar, the reason it's written like this is for the language strings, so that this can be decoded for the language that's set for the backend of Joomla, and you can put different language files in then and select different languages. They would go into the be picked from the languages area, and they would replace these bits where you see this with the correct language. So there's a bit more work to do on that language part. So here's a language file. This is the main one, which is in the plugin, and so you can see basic stage, email, workflow email, all the various bits that you see in the back end. This is obviously in English, but you can have multiple languages by just adding them into the different language folders. And then the next one is the system one, which is when you install a plugin. These are the bits that are shown in the installation, and give you the very briefest description and the name of the plugin. And then once it's installed, it then has the ability to go to the normal ini. So it's the system ini one, which is used on installation. Come on, change. Thank you. So here we have part of the I'll go and cover it all up. The actions XML, and the actions is in let me just see if I can move. I can't move it. So it's workflow plugins, forms action.xml, and this sets up the bit in the back of the plugin where we could select what we were actually doing, and it's got the values here for the the sending, whether or not we're sending, and the text area where we could actually put out a little bit of text, which will then be picked up and be put into the email. So very simple. So this will be used every time there is a transition that has the tab that shows the email ability to send. And if it's selected, then this is where it will actually switch on the selection of the email, and this is where you can put the text to put into the email. Got the text and this is the area where we picked our user group. If you remember, when I was looking at the transitions, you could select the user group that the transition would go to, and so this sorts through the Joomla user groups and then fills all those in there, and the same with the individual email users if you wanted to. So it's a very simple query here. This one just picks it straight up. This one's actually got a query. So select ID from the users table where block equals 0, so they've not been blocked, and basically order them by name ascending. So very simple. And of course, you can extend it to be users from a specific user group. So you could just have admins or whatever if you were to define this further. This is a really nice thing about using the query field, is you can actually use this to change what's actually going to be shown and be very specific to your plugin. So really nice field to use, which I do use quite often in plugins. And so I'm going to whiz through the, because there's bound to be some questions, I'm going to whiz through the main file. So this is the email.php file. So that's workflow plugins, workflow email, email.php. So you always start off with define or die, so that it can't be a point of entry. Then we pull in the interfaces that we need to use. So this is giving us the ability to use a lot of different things that Joomla can pre-set up for us. This is one of the powers of Joomla, and using a framework such as Joomla. And so we've had to give our name a class name, and so we call it plugin. It's always going to be PLG and then workflow, because it's a workflow plugin, and then the name that you decided to call your file, and the name and the main class will have the same name. That's the usual convention. And so once you've set that up, various things are brought in here. So workflow plugin traits brings traits, auto loading, so auto loading all the bits and bobs, app and database, so you can use the database in the app. And then this is the subscribe event. So you're basically subscribing to events here, and I was talking to Benjamin the other day, it could be extended to more events than this, but on content prepare form. So as the content form is being prepared, obviously you need the plugin to be rendered and things to happen. And on workflow after transition, you want to hook into that hook so that it then does it. So it says, you've hooked into it. Is there any actions for this workflow to do? Yes, there are. What are the actions? Here they are. Now do them. And so this is really nice because it's just simple array. You can add more listening points, and then you can write functions which then hook into those listening points. So we have our first listening point, which is on content prepare form. And here is the function, public function on content prepare form. And this sets it all up so that your form is rendered. I won't go too much through this, but this is basically, if you're going to write your own plugin, depending on what the functionality will be, you'll probably always want this because you'll be wanting to render the plugin in the back end so you can do things with it. And so just copy these bits. And that sets it all up. And then the main kind of interesting work area is the on workflow after transition, which is basically saying something's happened, it's a transition, what do I need to do? Do I meet these criteria? Should I be doing something? So we set some bits up. So we're looking at the transitions, the extension name, the content, and the IDs, I think it is. And then is this supported in content? So remember, we looked at the back end of the plugin, and I said that there were specific types of content of plugin that were workflows could be assigned to. You might in the future have a user one or other ones, you know, a calendar workflow and a registration workflow, whatever. Well, obviously you only want to apply it to the right ones. So this is saying, you know, is this the right context of the workflow? Is it supported? And so we're going to then start to boot it up, and this is actually booting up. Basically, this is returning straight away if we're not interested in doing anything to do with the email. There's no point in hanging around. No, nothing to see here, so just return. And return. There we go. And then what we're going to do here is we're looking for who's going to be receiving this. Is there any IDs of users that we set up? So it has to then go and get those users to find out what their emails are so it can send it to them. And then you're looking at the languages. So default language for the, you've got it set for. So this will be useful for all those that use languages other than English. Debugging, the whole debugging part. And then we're looking at the model name so that we can now go and see, go and get the bits from the workflow model and going through there. Now we've got our users, we're looking for the user IDs, going through those. And this part is important because you don't want to be sending it to the email of the person that's doing it. There's no point in me emailing myself that there's a workflow thing that's happened. So if I shouldn't be able to set an article for Phil to review, but I haven't stopped me from doing it. But in this case, as I will be the logged in person doing that, there is no point in me sending myself an email to say that I've done it. So that's what this is doing, to check it's not the person that's actually doing the action, that the user is different. I don't think I missed anything else there. Remove users with locked input box from list of receivers. Okay, yep. If there are no receivers, stop there. So if there's just no IDs of anyone, then just return with nothing to do. And then we move down the rest. So we're looking for the private message part. I left that in there. So we're building up the message, and then we're looking for the, so we've already got the users. So we're looking for the from name and the from email of the system. So this is the one we set in the front of Joomla when you're setting up Joomla to be able to do email. And so it's looking for that from name and the from email. And you could override it. You could probably put in the plugin a different email address or a different email user that it should come from. And you could write that into the plugin if you wanted to. And so it would be picked up and not use the default one. But there's no need for me to do that. So I'm just using the default one here. And then we're going through and through the whole lot here, looking for the title. We're looking for all the bits to build up the message. The receivers we've got, the languages, we're checking the languages. We've got the subject being produced, and we've got the message being built up, message text. And we simply then squirt that through with the special characters, and that gives us our actual message text, as long as it's not empty. And then we're using the standard Joomla mail system so we don't have to write out anything ourselves. We're just using that to then send the mail. Who it's from, that's the system one. From name, that's the system one. Receiver is the receivers in the list. Subject that the transition had, and the message that was in the message box of the email there. And the next bit you've got here is the on queue. So this is if there was any problems. I skipped a little bit there. So yeah, so we just got the on queue message, which is the message that says, you know, everything was fine, or it all broke and everything went wrong. So this is our on queue message for when something has happened. So let's say you next logged in, if there have been problems, then it would actually show you there. And then these are just some simple little functions. Get users from the group. So because we have the ability to send to user groups. And so as long as the groups are not empty, then it goes off, gets different groups, builds up the users that should be in that, and then that gets pushed through, so they would then be sent the email as well. And then this is the last function is supported, so it's checking that it's allowed in the permissions, because if it's not allowed, then it shouldn't be doing it at all. This extensions, yeah, that's basically the end of it. So that is our and this is the lock. So whether or not it's been locked, whether or not they can actually get messages in their inbox, and so that's just a simple query here. Check for lock boxes. Will be better settings. Yeah, there's quite a lot of things I'd like to change. I mean, this is very basic. There's quite a lot of things that I'd like to change in it going forward, or others to improve it. So one of the thoughts that came to mind is this is sending out emails to everybody, and you can have the notification plugin as well on. You can switch the notification plugin off, so it doesn't do notifications. And of course, you can set these to categories, so you can have different workflows doing different things. What would be really nice is to use the Joomla template system for emails. So you could actually make it easier for people to set up an email template for the email that would be in the notification. And I think that would be the next stage to go to. I'd like to play around with that, because the email templates came out in Joomla 4.1, 4.0. No, 4.0. And so we've got that ability now. I appreciate I'm running out of time. And the other thought is, do you amalgamate the two? And so you have notifications and emails in the one plugin. I actually prefer them to be separate, so you can just switch off notification or just switch off email if you don't need it. But that is another option that is could be considered. And yeah, you just go to town with it and extend it. The other really nice thing about doing it like this is, if you decide to take my email code that's put in here, build your own one, and then install that, you just uninstall the one that will be in Joomla 4.2, and yours takes over, and you can be as fancy as you like. So it's a really nice, simple plugin to extend, to play with, and to learn more about workflow plugins using. And that is basically the end of the talk. The email workflow plugin has been given to the 4.2 team and will hopefully be added to the core of 4.2. If you want it before then, just email me and I can send you the package. Not a problem at all. Just say, you want the email one for workflows, and I can send that as a zip file for you just to install on your site. Things I'd encourage people to do if you're not already a member of GLIP. There is a Bugs and Fun at Home channel where a lot of coders meet, so you can chat about code in the general main channel, but that's quite an active one for coders. There's also other channels for PHP Storm and other IDEs, so there's a lot of good help in GLIP. And I'd like to say thanks to the sponsors, all the different sponsors that have been sponsoring JoomlaDay USA and making it such a good day. I would like to thank the crew of JoomlaDay USA for sending so many emails to make sure that we knew how to do things. To my moderator, Ian Nelson, who I had to contact while he was on his holiday, and my good friend Benjamin Trenkle, who actually helped with the plugin, even though he forgot about it the other day. But he did give a lot of help on it and has been really helpful for so many other things as well. And that is basically it.
Thanks, Phil. We had one question which you've answered thoroughly, which was
13 in the chat, so I was a bit concerned there might be quite a lot, but
yeah, there's one so far. No one's putting it in, but please feel free to add them. We've got probably about 13 minutes left if we need it. So that was availability of the plugin that you've talked about, which you've mentioned quite thoroughly there.
Okay.
I've got one which is probably less about your plugin and more about workflows, just out of interest. So you can assign workflow transitions, or I haven't used them yet, so apologies for using the wrong terminology, but you can assign them to a group or multiple people for a stage, say reviewing something. And from what I understood, any one of those can review and then pass it to the next stage. Is there a way of making it so if you want 3 people to review it and all of them to review it, that it can't pass to the next stage until all 3 have been forced to complete that stage?
That's a really good question. That's an interesting one. So there are several ways you can play with this. I mean, the only way I can think of, and it would have to be sequential, is literally each person had to pass it in order to the next. So let's say we have Bob 1, Bob 2, and Bob 3, and
Right.
you have team that can pass it to Bob 1, then team would have permission to pass it to Bob 1. Bob 1 would only see that he can pass it to Bob 2. Bob 2 would only see that he can pass it to Bob 3.
Right.
Bob 3 can then pass it to the team again. And it wouldn't come out the other side unless it'd gone through that funnel. That's kind of the 3 in series. I can't think of a way of doing it in parallel.
Just effectively where all 3 have ticked a box to say, yes, I approve, and you've got 3 approvals effectively before
so it would need
so they could review it at the same time, but
well, actually, no, I lie. Well, so it will be Enter the Dash from my bell ringing days. So if I explain, you could actually set up 6 workflows, 6 transitions, but 1, 2, and 3. So whichever one started it, and of course they could then see the next one, which will be the different orders of them, and then they could do it with the other order. So if you have,
right.
I think it's enter the dash. So I think it will be 6 different transitions. Then you'd have to have to allow those 3 to do it.
Thank you.
But that would be quite horrible because it wouldn't scale very well. So interesting.
It was just one from a separate system, separate job at the moment where we have, it's actually documents, but for document reviews where we need multiple people to approve them before we can pass them to the next stage. And I was just using that as a
in that case, what you would do is you'd have a workflow which presented perhaps a custom field. I'm talking straight on top of my head here.
Very good.
A custom field when it moved from team to the Bobs. suddenly this custom field would be visible to them. And the check would be that in the code, you can see in transitions, like with the email, you can't pass, you can't move, you can't do the thing unless it's fulfilled criteria. So what you would look is you would look to see if all three had ticked their own separate custom field, or 3 boxes on the custom field have been ticked. And you might make them only visible, those custom fields. The custom fields could be specifically visible to only those particular users. So each one would see their own tick box. All 3 would have to have ticked it for the transition to then pass the next phase. Now, what you'd really want there is a really clever thing like a cron, so that you could do a cron. So every few minutes, it would just check if those situations had happened. And if they had, then suddenly the transition could work automatically in the background and go on to be all 3 reviewed, on to the next. And luckily, in 4.1, we have the cron job. So you could use the cron job and add it to workflows. And this is one of the things I see, 2 things I see becoming quite harmonious to actually make that happen. So you can use the cron job, for example, and workflows to set up publishing and unpublishing and republishing, unpublishing again, evergreen articles. And the cron job, the workflow would have the fact that it needs to be a set time of year, which you'd set in the back of the workflow, the plugin. And all your Christmas stuff would suddenly miraculously, instead of me having to say, these are all evergreen and I changed them in the actions, you could actually get the workflow, because the cron job has triggered it, to check the date, and when it is the date, it would then move all of those back to being in the send out the social media. And then once the social media is done, the person could put it back, or it could even automatically send out the social media. And once it's got an acknowledgement back from the social media platforms that things were okay, automatically move it back into the state where it doesn't need to be pushed out again. So with workflows and the cron, the task scheduler, as I should call it, I can see them becoming very powerful tools to do automation in the back end.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tiemann has referenced that that's rather complicated, but I translate his words slightly.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realise Mr. Tiemann was there watching.
He's watching
Hello,
you.
Brian.
Any other questions for anyone? We've got 5 minutes or so. We haven't got any posted at the moment. So obviously you've done a very good job of presenting with everybody fully understanding the process. And certainly we've got at least one person looking for early access to your plugin. So
yeah, no problems with that. I would say this is a really good one to copy and just play with, because you can put stuff in there, the email one, for it to email you so you can check if certain things have happened. And with workflows, do play with them. I set my whole system up in what I thought was a simple way, and then realized that it didn't do what I needed. I needed more stages and more transitions. And one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is using permissions, is certain workflows that only certain permissions can see, like the super users. So a super user can effectively just see everything, but the people that have got, say, manager or publisher access, they only see the workflow they need to see. And this gives you these funnels or pipelines that are very, very strict. And if you think about it and can work it correctly, then people just can't go wrong. And then, of course, you can have the super user ones so the boss can budget and fill in if people aren't around on that day of that group to be able to do that thing. So it's a really powerful tool. I really like it. It's really helped the business, because as soon as Stacey's done her social media, or as soon as she's put the image in, I get an email to say I need to review it. And you don't have all the different sites open all the time, but you do have your email open, and it could be so easily pushed to WhatsApp or SMS. Be brilliant.
No, thank you very much. Certainly for me, it was very useful. I've not looked at, I've known it's coming, but I've not played with it at all. So it's been really helpful to see how to set it up. We've got a thank you for a nice talk from Berta in the chat.
Thank you.
So give it another chance. It doesn't look like we've got, unless I'm looking at the wrong place, I can't see any open questions that anybody's posted. So that's fine. Thank you very much.